Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're gonna compare Redmi Note 9 Pro versus Realme Narzo 30 Pro versus Poco X3. It's gonna be a really interesting comparison, so do watch till end. And now let's start the comparison. As usual, first we start with the pricing. Redmi Note 10 Pro 6 plus 64GB costs 16,000, 6 plus 128GB costs 17,000, 8 plus 128GB at 19,000. Whereas the Narzo 30 Pro costs 6 plus 64GB 17,000, 8 plus 128GB at 20,000. Whereas the Poco X3 has 3 variants: 6 plus 64 17,000, 6 plus 128 18,000, and 8 plus 128 20,000. So now let's start their comparison. The Redmi Note 10 Pro has a 6.67-inch Full HD Plus Super AMOLED display. It's the first time a phone below 20k is getting the Super AMOLED 120Hz refresh rate display, and it has 240Hz touch sampling rate. It has Gorilla Glass 5 and it weighs pretty light, 192 grams, because of the AMOLED display. Now if we come to the Narzo 30A, it's a 6.5-inch Full HD Plus IPS LCD display with a 120Hz of refresh rate and 180Hz of touch sampling rate. The Gorilla Glass protection here is unspecified, but it does have Gorilla Glass protection. It weighs 197 pounds, which is also decent enough, but not the best. Now if we come to the Poco X3, it also has a 6.67-inch Full HD Plus IPS LCD display with 120Hz refresh rate and 240Hz touch sampling rate. The Gorilla Glass protection is 5 and it weighs pretty heavy, 225 grams. So in the display segment, definitely Redmi Note 9 Pro wins because it's the first time you're getting stuff like this. So yes, now let's move ahead to the next step, which is the processor. Now the Redmi Note 10 Pro is equipped with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 732G 4G processor. Yes, it is not 5G. The Antutu score is around 3.1 lakhs, whereas if we come to the Narzo 30 Pro, it has a MediaTek Dimensity 800U, which is a killer processor at the price point. It has 5G as well, and the Antutu score is around 3.3 lakhs plus, and it has 4 5G band support, so it is kind of future proof. Now if you move ahead to the Poco X3, it also has the same processor as the Redmi Note 9 Pro, which is a Snapdragon 732G. It is also a 4G processor, 2.9 lakhs Antutu score it has. Now let's move ahead to the next segment, which is the camera. The Redmi Note 10 Pro and the Poco X3 both have quad camera setup, whereas the Narzo 30 Pro has a triple camera setup. Redmi Note 10 Pro has 64 megapixel main sensor. It is not a Sony sensor, with 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, 2 megapixel depth. Now it has a 16 megapixel punch hole selfie camera. We can expect the images to be pretty decent because we haven't tested them, so we cannot comment anything about the images. Whereas the Narzo 30 Pro has 48 megapixel Samsung sensor with 8 megapixel ultra wide and 2 megapixel macro with a 16 megapixel selfie. The camera of Narzo 30 Pro is pretty decent, not too good at the price point, but the Poco X3 has the best camera setup because it has a 64 megapixel Sony IMX682 sensor along with a good 13 megapixel ultra wide camera and 2 megapixel depth and macro, which are useless. Whereas it has a Sony IMX682 sensor, which is the best because other two are Samsung sensors, which are not great in front of Sony sensor. The selfie is also the best in comparison to the other two 20 megapixel punch hole selfie camera. Now let's come to the battery. Redmi Note 10 Pro battery is 5020 mAh, which will easily last one day on heavy usage, and if you use it normally, then it will last 1.5 days. It is also equipped with 33 watt of fast charging in box, whereas the Narzo 30 Pro has a similar enough 5000 mAh battery with 30 watt of fast charging in box, whereas the Poco X3 has 6000 mAh battery with 30 watt fast charging in box. Now let's move ahead to the next segment, which is the other section. Now Redmi Note 9 Pro has side fingerprint scanner, headphone jack, glass back, micro SD card slot, dual speakers, IR blaster, MIUI 12 running on Android 11, which is a really great point. Now if we come to the Narzo 30 Pro, it has side fingerprint, headphone jack, plastic back, no micro SD card slot. Yes, because I'm telling you, don't buy the 64GB variant if you want to buy the Narzo 30A because you cannot expand it. It does not have dual stereo speakers, which is surprising. It has IR blaster, it has Realme UI running on Android 10, which is also surprising because we should have expected Android 11 out of the box this time. Whereas the Poco X3 has side mounted fingerprint scanner, headphone jack, plastic back, no micro SD card slot. Here also don't buy the 64GB variant. It has dual speakers, it has IR blaster, it has a MIUI 12 running on Android 10. Now let's move ahead to the final segment, which is our verdict. Now if you want to choose a Redmi Note 10 Pro, probably the reasons would be the Super AMOLED display with a 120Hz of refresh rate. It has expandable slot, it has 64 megapixel decent camera but not the best. It has UFS 2.2 storage whereas the others are stuck at UFS 2.1, and it has stereo speakers. Now let's move ahead to the Narzo 30 Pro. The reasons to choose really only two: because of a 5G, yes, it is future proof and it offers the best processor at the price point. Otherwise, Narzo 30 Pro I'm not going to recommend you. Whereas a Poco X3, the reasons to choose would be the best Sony 64 megapixel camera and the best camera setup in comparison to the other two, and it also has the best selfie camera, and it also has the best battery with a 6000 mAh battery. Anyway, so overall, whom should I recommend? I will definitely recommend you the Redmi Note 10 Pro because it is a totally a killer phone at the price point. You can close your eyes and opt for the Redmi Note 10 Pro unless you are secured about future, because if you want to use a phone for 1 to 1.5 years, definitely go for Redmi Note 10 Pro. If you want to use a phone for 3 years around, then you can think of going for the Narzo 30 Pro, because Redmi Note 10 Pro is not future proof because it does not support 5G. But the Narzo 30 Pro, if you want to buy it, I will suggest wait for some time, wait for Realme 8 Pro. It will come at the price point of Narzo 30 Pro that will offer you better 5G value. Anyway, so we hope you like this video, and do like, share, subscribe and comment, and we'll be back with the next video soon. So till then, bye and thanks for watching.